January 27th, 2014, the day after the Royal Rumble. World Wrestling Entertainment is on the frantic road to its biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. But on this day, its most authentic, controversial, and arguably most compelling superstar just vanished. CM Punk, the man who clawed his way to the top of an industry that never really wanted him, was gone. No loser leaves town match, no big farewell speech on TV, he simply left. At the absolute peak of his fame, with the roar of thousands still in his ears, he walked out and wouldn't look back for almost 10 years. For years, the real story was buried under rumors, speculation, and a whole lot of bitter silence. Fans were stunned, still chanting his name in arenas, wondering how the best in the world could just disappear. The answer, when it finally exploded into the open, was more shocking than any storyline. It was a raw, real-life story of backstage politics, a terrifying health crisis, and a level of disrespect that pushed a man right over the edge. This is the story of why CM Punk had to quit WWE, a story that, even today, is hard to believe. To get why his exit was such a bombshell, you have to get CM Punk himself. In an era of muscle-bound, cookie-cutter champions, Punk was the exact opposite. He was this tattooed, straight-edge punk rocker from Chicago who looked more like a guy in a mosh pit than a WWE headliner. He was the ultimate outsider, and WWE made sure he knew it. But his raw charisma, his fire on the microphone, and his incredible talent in the ring made him impossible to keep down. Then came June 27, 2011, the pipe bomb. In a moment that completely shattered the line between fiction and reality, Punk sat on a stage in Las Vegas and just let it all out. He tore into the company, its owner Vince McMahon, and the corporate machine that he felt held down real talent in favor of hand-picked poster boys. It was shocking, it was real, and it was absolutely electric. That promo made him a megastar, leading to an all-time classic WWE Championship win in his hometown of Chicago. This wasn't just another champion. It was a full-blown movement. Fans who felt ignored by the polished corporate product finally had their guy, and his name was CM Punk. What came next was one of the most legendary WWE Championship reigns in modern history, 434 days. He put on classic matches with icons like John Cena and The Undertaker, proving night after night that he was the best. By every single metric, he was the top guy. He had shown the world that an outsider could become the face of the company. So, with everything going for him, what went so horribly wrong? The first major cracks started to show over the one thing every wrestler dreams of, the main event of WrestleMania. Even after holding the WWE Championship for over a year, Punk watched his top spot get handed to a part-time legend. In 2013, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson came back to WWE, took the title from Punk at the Royal Rumble, and went on to main event WrestleMania 29 against John Cena. Punk, the guy who had carried the company all year, was bumped down to a high-profile but secondary match against The Undertaker. For Punk, this felt like the ultimate slap in the face. He was the one working a grueling, non-stop schedule, putting his body on the line every single week, only to be shoved aside for a Hollywood star who'd pop in for a few months and take the biggest paycheck. It confirmed his worst fears, that no matter how hard he worked or how popular he got, management would always favor the established part-timers over the talent grinding it out day in and day out. He felt that promises from the office were constantly being broken. He had a tense relationship with executives like Triple H, who he saw as a key part of the corporate machine that held him down. That tension only got worse as Triple H gained more power backstage. The rumored plan for WrestleMania 30 was for Punk to face Triple H, a match Punk wanted no part of. He saw it as just another attempt to use his hard-earned popularity to put over a member of management. The creative frustration was at a boiling point. He'd hit a glass ceiling, not because of his talent, but because of a system that refused to truly see him as the star he was. The health crisis, a life-threatening secret. While the creative battles were draining, something much more dangerous was happening behind the scenes, something that threatened not just his career, but his life. The WWE schedule is famously brutal, and Punk was paying the price. He was wrestling through concussions, broken ribs, and bad knees. In his own words, he was banged up. But one problem was different. For months, he'd been complaining to WWE's medical team about a lump on his back. According to Punk, he was repeatedly told it was just a fatty deposit and was given antibiotics that didn't work. He claimed the WWE doctor, Chris Amann, refused to cut it out, possibly for cosmetic reasons. As the lump got bigger, more painful, and changed color, Punk grew more and more worried. He was getting sicker, dealing with fevers, headaches, and a total loss of appetite. And through it all, he was still expected to perform. The horrifying truth came out after he left. He finally saw a doctor outside of WWE who was horrified. She immediately diagnosed it as a MRSA staph infection. She told him it was so bad that if he'd waited any longer, he could have died. The doctor drained the life-threatening infection right there in her office, a procedure Punk described as agonizing. This revelation was the most damning part of his story. He accused WWE and its medical staff of gross negligence, claiming they not only misdiagnosed a deadly condition, but pressured him to wrestle through it. While WWE defended their medical staff and Dr. Amann later sued Punk for defamation, a lawsuit Punk eventually won, the story sent a chill through the wrestling world. It painted a dark picture of a culture where a performer's health could take a back seat to the show. The final straw and the infamous FedEx. By January 2014, CM Punk was a broken man. He was physically hurt, mentally fried, and felt completely betrayed by the company he'd given his life to. After suffering a concussion early in the 2014 Royal Rumble match and still being forced to finish it, he'd had enough. The next day, he walked into a meeting with Vince McMahon and Triple H, told them he was sick, hurt, and mentally done, and said, "I'm going home." And that's exactly what he did. For months, there was silence. Fans chanted his name, but the company acted like he never existed. Then came the final cruel twist. In June 2014, on his wedding day to fellow wrestler AJ Lee, a FedEx package arrived. Inside were his termination papers. He was fired on his wedding day. To Punk, the timing was no accident. He saw it as a calculated, very deliberate final insult from a company he felt had tried to break his spirit. Vince McMahon later publicly apologized, claiming it was just terrible timing from the legal department, but for Punk, the damage was done. It was the last nail in the coffin of a relationship that had turned completely toxic. A few months later, in November 2014, Punk broke his silence on his friend Colt Cabana's Art of Wrestling podcast. For 2 hours, he laid it all out. The creative insults, the disrespect from management, the shocking MRSA story, and the pain of being fired on his wedding day. The podcast went viral, cementing the story of a brilliant performer who was pushed out of the business he loved. As he put it, "I was never going to get healthy, physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, staying in the same place that got me sick in the first place." The wilderness and a controversial return. For 7 long years, CM Punk was gone from wrestling. He gave UFC a shot, an adventure that proved his incredible toughness but ended in 2 decisive losses. He seemed to have left wrestling in the rearview mirror for good, but in 2021, the impossible happened. He came back. Not to WWE, but to its new rival, All Elite Wrestling. His AEW debut was met with a massive emotional ovation. It looked like the perfect comeback story. But controversy wasn't far behind. His famously outspoken personality led to backstage conflict. A now infamous press conference rant led to a physical fight known as Brawl Out. After coming back from suspension, another backstage fight, this time with wrestler Jack Perry, was the last straw. In September 2023, AEW fired him, with its CEO Tony Khan saying he had feared for his safety. Fired from the top 2 wrestling companies in America. It seemed like the end of the line. It was unimaginable that he would ever wrestle on a major stage again. And then, just 2 months later, the wrestling world truly stood still. But before we get to the most shocking comeback in modern wrestling history, if you're loving these deep dives into the stories that shaped the business, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming. Hell freezes over. The return to WWE. At Survivor Series in November 2023, in his hometown of Chicago, the first notes of Cult of Personality hit the arena. The entire building exploded in a roar of pure, unfiltered shock and joy. After nearly 10 years of bitterness, lawsuits, and public feuds, CM Punk was back in a WWE ring. The return was a masterclass in secrecy, known only to a handful of people. Triple H, the very man Punk had so much conflict with, had reportedly met with him to bury the hatchet. Both men apparently felt the other had changed and were willing to start fresh. It was proof of that old wrestling saying, never say never. Since his return, the reports from backstage have been overwhelmingly positive. Colleagues say Punk is a changed man, going out of his way to be a positive presence and mend fences. He even suffered another major injury, tearing his triceps at the 2024 Royal Rumble, but used the setback as a way to grow, turning what he called the worst thing that's ever happened to me into a chance to lead by example. This new perspective shaped his second run, leading to the one thing that had eluded him his entire career. At WrestleMania 41, CM Punk finally main-evented the show. Though he didn't win the match, the moment was everything. In a documentary, an emotional Punk reflected, "It's everything I wanted since I was a little kid. I just did it. I fucking did it." His relationship with Triple H had come full circle, with his former rival giving him a passionate pep talk right before the match. The story of CM Punk's WWE exit wasn't about just one thing. It was a perfect storm of creative burnout, feeling utterly disrespected by the company he gave his life to, and a terrifying health scare that he believed was completely mishandled. He was a man pushed past his breaking point who felt he had no choice but to walk away to save his own health and sanity. His departure sparked a long-overdue conversation about the well-being of wrestlers. For a decade, he was the ghost that haunted WWE. A symbol of what happens when a company fails one of its biggest stars. But his impossible return, his changed attitude, and finally getting his WrestleMania moment have added the ultimate, unpredictable chapter to his story. He was the man who walked away from it all, only to come back nearly a decade later to find the redemption that almost no one, fans included, ever thought was possible.